Now, the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer is currently in Washington to discuss the Russia-Ukraine war with the US President Joe Biden. The leaders of Britain and United States will decide whether Kyiv should be permitted to fire the Western long-range missiles on Russia. The UK Prime Minister's visit to Washington comes as the Ukrainian President has been requesting allies to let Ukraine fire Western missiles, including the long-range US missiles and the British Storm Shadow missiles, deep into Russia to limit Moscow's ability to launch attacks. Now, in response to Ukraine's request, Russia has warned the West that giving Kyiv the green light would mean NATO is at war with Moscow. The UK media reported the US president, who is wary of provoking a nuclear conflict, was ready to let Ukraine deploy British and French missiles using US technology, but not the US-made missiles themselves. The focus is now on the talks in Washington after the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken and the British Foreign Secretary David Lammy had a joint fact-finding trip to Kyiv this week and offered new support for Ukraine.
I actually I began to watch the game with them.
And for the very latest on this, we're now being joined by Stuart Smith from London. And well, Stuart, I would assume that this is going to be a very important meeting between Keir Starmer and Joe Biden, one which could determine and decide the future course of this war, given the decision on the missiles.
Yeah, it could do, and Downing Street has actually been quite clear that it believes this meeting will go into a detailed, deeper discussion that goes beyond the usual format, it says, of the bilateral meetings between the UK and US, and also the telephone calls that it says UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer frequently has with US President Joe Biden. Also, as part of that meeting, there'll be deeper strategic discussions, Downing Street says, ahead of the United Nations General Assembly later in the month, and also the G20 coming up. The focus, and that's been confirmed by London, will be on those Storm Shadow missiles made by the UK and France, but given to Ukraine by London. And these missiles, while it's not expected amongst military analysts there will be a significant change in Ukraine's fortunes with those missiles, it is something that they are very keen to get because it would allow them to target the very bases within Russian territory from which Moscow launches its attacks. But the reaction of President Vladimir Putin is exactly why the United States has been so cautious. He said on Thursday, the Russian president, that this would be tantamount to a direct war with NATO if these long-range precision missiles are delivered to Ukraine, an escalation the US is hoping to avoid. But background talk suggest this has been prompted by Iran allegedly giving long-range missiles to Russia to use in Ukraine. So Washington saying that's the motive and that it's responding to an escalation. Russia perhaps preparing to release statements saying it's responding to an escalation.
Right, Stuart. So obviously a very tenuous situation there with those talks taking place in Washington as we speak. Thanks very much indeed for that. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.